everyone, and welcome to the online live webinar from CaseWare, Netherlands. The topic for the webinar today is an introduction to idea scripting. Idea scripting, as we all know, is a very powerful developmental tool which is available to users, and it provides amazing versatility and scalability to users to greatly enhance and customize their idea using experience. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for the webinar this evening, Desmond Maandag from CaseWare Idea, the Netherlands. A brief introduction to Desmond before I hand over the session to him. Desmond is a senior product specialist with CaseWare Idea, the Netherlands. He's been with the CaseWare Analytics team for more than 20 years, and he has extensive experience on technical implementations, application development, idea-related product training, and consultancy projects. So Desmond, over to you, and we look forward to your webinar this evening. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. For the Netherlands, it's actually good afternoon because it's 1:30 over here. So welcome. Based on my years of experience with ID, I started actually to work with ID when ID version 1.2 was released. And now we're already at version 11, so that's many releases ago. And at a certain stage, I got acquainted to VBA, to ID script, and throughout the years, I've been implementing a lot of business processes with customers. And based on that, I basically developed a little bit of my own standard in order to get an effective implementation about using ID script within an organization. So, as you all can see, it's now a PowerPoint slide. I'm not very much fun into PowerPoint, so it's only a few slides, and I would rather have the software do the talking for me instead of a PowerPoint. So let's see if I can resume this. Resume slideshow. Okay, so a brief introduction to script. One of the most common errors that people who are going to use ID script is that during scripting they lose oversight of the scope. I've seen within many organizations that people are enthusiastic and start scripting, and they find specific things, and besides that they find other things and they're going to script it as well. And it's very important not to deviate from the scope of the audit. A lot of scripts are delegated from head of internal audit, and they say, I would like to have this business process automated. I would like to see these results. And it's important to stick to that. Seen it many times that something like that goes total out of control, and it takes more time, takes more resources, it becomes more expensive, and it's ineffective. So that is one of the important things. Next is throughout the years, I've created my 5 programming steps when starting to use ID script. It's important to divide a script into sections. So we all must start with source data. So importing the data is one section. The second session, the second part of the script is about preparing the data. Make sure that you have the fields in the correct types with the correct names. If you have multiple tables, multiple files, you need to join them together, append them, use Visual Connect. Make sure that you prepare the data. Then the next step is to create the analysis. So create what kind it could be that you're looking for a specific type of analysis, which is not directly available. You need to get that out of 3-4 steps: joins, append fields, use field statistics to make calculations. So the third part is to running the analytics. Then after the analytics have been run, you will get results. You will say, out of this test, out of, for example, a claims audit, I find that these claims are very suspicious. They might be duplicates, same customer, same date, same amount, same type, things like that. If you have those results in ID, not everybody within the organization will use ID or has access to ID. You need to just distribute the results. You could either export, put it to an Excel file, to a PDF, an Access database, or if you want to put it into Power BI, export it as a comma-separated file. And then finally, you need to perform housekeeping. With any script, you will create intermediate files, joins, visual connects, appends, the files that are intermediate in order to finally get the results. If possible, delete the intermediate files. So that's performing housekeeping. You optimize your disk space, your available disk space, and in any case, in your history, you will always have the total overview of what you have done. So when you start using ID script, and not everybody is knowledgeable about VBA, I use 3 types of resources. I fall back on the ID help and the language browser, which I will show during my my presentation with ID. I use the ID CaseWare support website. Through CaseWare Passport, there are many already written scripts available, which you can download, which you can modify, which you can change and use for your own purpose. And I often use the Microsoft Visual Basic Language reference website. And there's a link below this below this bit of text, and I'm more than happy to share that with you. Then, throughout the years, I've learned to use a kind of a template. So if I have a template, I always work with the same type of variables. I have my specifics already built in, so it contains the variables I would like to use. It contains an error routine that is standard if you start with a blank script not available. I can use a verify file and field existence, and I can even create my own logging. Regarding, for example, file and field existence, it's not difficult to create an ID script. But what's difficult is to cope with all the exceptions. If you, for example, would look at a claims script where you say, I would like to see on a weekly basis all the claims that are over, let's say, $100,000. And you get to a certain point where in a week there is no claims over $100,000. If that file containing all the lines with $100,000 is that important to continue, what happens if it's empty? So often you have to, for example, use file and field existence in order to check for the file, look at the number of records inside, and then determine what the script action is. So that is a little bit questions we will handle after the presentation, but at least that is my brief part of talking about my experience with ID script. Now I have to change my screen, and I have to change my screen to monitor number 2. So I have here a virtual machine running specifically with a Unicode version of ID 11.1. And I've created a presentation project. And in that presentation project, I only have what is needed to perform my audit. So I talked about that you need to know your audit steps. So here's a little example. See if I can make it a little bit smaller of the audit steps that I need to do for this audit. Now, there are only 8 steps, so it's not going to be a lot of rocket science, but this is my clear view of what has to be done, and this is what I'm going to do. This is the assignment I got, for example, from an audit manager, Okay, can you create this regarding sales invoices? So if you're new to ID, then let's do those steps. So the first one was to import a specific file, sales invoices, using a definition. So multiple ways to start using script. You could either go to the macros ribbon and start recording. Just like a VCR in the past or a hard disk recorder you have nowadays, it records all the steps. It's very nice, it's very good. Only if you make an incorrect action, it will record that as well. The other option you have is to use Project Overview. Project Overview currently is empty, it's a blank. I have no actions, no tasks have been run. And if you then have any errors, you could either skip those errors and create skip the task to put that into a script. So I'm going to use my record macro. You can see it stays a little bit bluish. I'm going to my home screen and I'm going to do the steps. Okay, so there's a question that the resolution is apparently a little bit low. So I could see if I can change the resolution of my view for you. I'm going to make it right. So let me just ask you, does this look better? Some of you have written the question that it is a little bit unclear. It's too small.
Definitely better, Desmond.
Okay, all right. So I'll try to use this screen. That also means that the PDF will be a little bit bigger. So first thing is going to import the sales invoice text. So I'm going to my desktop import. And a lot of you will know that as being ID users. So this is no rocket science. I'm going to get the file that I need together with the definition that I have. I mean, that's proven. This audit has been performed many times before, but it's all done manually. So here we see the invoice date, time. This all looks okay. I'm going to say next, and I'm going to give it a proper name, sales invoices. I'm going to click finish. So here we have the file. So step one has been done. So now we have to add a field called quarter with this function. So I'm going to say append, and I'm going to make quarter, which is virtual numeric, and it has a specific parameter, QTR, of the invoice date, with the parameter that the 31st of December is my year end. So I can evaluate that. That's fine. If you're pretty sure about your formulas, instead of creating virtual numeric, you can also go straight to numeric, right? If you're sure about your equation, if you know that is right, you can do it like that as well. And you can say, okay, now I have here the quarter at the end. So go back to my next step is calculate the control total for balance. All right, so we would like to know that control total for balance. It's not calculate, you want to calculate it, yes. This is the control total. Good, we've done that. Now we have to create a gap detection on invoice numbers. So we go to our analysis menu, gaps, based on invoice number, create a result, missing invoice numbers. I'm going to say okay, and we've done that. Next step is to say look for duplicates. All right, so we go back to the data. We're going to say duplicate key detection, and we're going to on the key of the invoice number, look for duplicate invoice numbers. Did it say something additionally? Nope, nothing. So I'm going to say, all right, duplicate invoice numbers, and that one I have as well. Create a summarized database, totals per quarter based on goods VAT amount and balance per quarter. Okay, going back to my sales, and I'm going to say run a summarization based on the quarter. And I would like to do that for net VAT amount and balance. And we're going to name the file, what was the totals per quarter. So make sure that you make no typos. And we say, okay. And here we have this one. So as an auditor, I'm not going to review the results now. I'm not interested in the numbers. I'm just interested in the process. Now I have to extract all unpaid invoices. So we're going to that, direct extraction, unpaid invoices, where we're going to say the field balance is not equal to 0. Check that, mark it, say okay. So that's the one. And then finally, we would like to create a pivot table on the unpaid invoices on town and quarter for amount and balance. Well, that's the easy thing about using a checklist. You can also copy the name. So go to unpaid invoices, go to do a pivot table, give it a name. We're going to create a pivot table. So we want quarter. And we want the town. And we want balance. And we want amount. Okay, anything else there? No, that's fine. So anything more here? No, this is done with number 8. So it's done. Close. I've performed my steps, created 3 files, 1 result, and here in the other one, a second result. So I've, finished my audit objective to create a macro. So we're going to say here, stop recording, and there are 2 types of macros. Been talking all the time about ID script, but you can also use visual script. When ID script, you're looking at the VBA code. Visual script is more user-friendly, but much more restricted, and you're looking at the menus. So for example, if you would like to create a visual script, you can say, okay, I would like to make a change to unpaid invoices. You wouldn't do that through the code, but you would do it through the menu. Sometimes during my trainings, I sometimes say, you all know the books. You have Network for Dummies and TCP/IP for Dummies, and you have all kinds of books that try to explain things in a more simplified way. And I sometimes say visual script is like ID script for dummies. But don't pin me down on that one. So I'm going to say here, if it's not your default, the first time it probably will say visual script. Select ID script and then tick once on make it my default. And then in the future, ID will always create the ID script as default value. So we'll make it a little bit bigger, this window. So here we have the VBA code. Now, if you can all see this quite well. So let's go. First, I would like to do is get my checklist. Perhaps make it a little bit smaller. Okay, in the script, can we find somewhere where it imports the text file? So let's go to the script. And here we have a call text import. So here, if we look at the code that it uses, goes, as you can see, to my user profile, my ID documents, presentation, And here we import the sales invoice text. And if we look a little bit down, you can say here we do the sales invoice.rdm. That's the record definition file. So the first one we could say we ticked it yes. So can we find a routine that does the quarter? Let's go back. If we go scroll downwards, it's done, it records it chronologically. Then we have the append field here, and here we do something with quarter, and here we see the formula. So on number 2, it's also recorded. Do we do a balance check? Well, apparently we don't, because here we have the DB control amount field, and that does the balance calculation. So number 3, that one is done as well. Number 4, testing on gaps, missing invoice numbers. Here we have the gap detection, and here we create the missing invoice numbers. Do note that this is a result. We created a number of files and we created a number of results. So the next one was the duplicate invoice numbers. And we have the duplicate invoice numbers here as well. Duplicate invoice numbers, and the function is duplicate key detection. So yes. Did the summarization for totals per quarter? Let's scroll down, and here we created totals per quarter. Okay, and then the next one is, did we create a file called unpaid invoices? And apparently we did. We created here a file called unpaid invoices. Balance not equal to 0. And then the last one, created a pivot table. Pivot table. No, I don't see a pivot table. Let's go all the way up. Look here in the submain. No pivot table. Okay. Before I start explaining how scripts work, pivot table. No, by default, ID doesn't record pivot tables. So let me save this one first. And I'm going to call this number 1. I'm going to overwrite it. Here we go. At least I have my macro saved. Okay, this one I can close. Now the thing is my pivot table. To go to unpaid invoices, and if you look here on the toolbar, you will see there is a little button that allows you to generate the code for the pivot table. So long story why it isn't in, but clicking on that and it will create a new bit of code saying, hey, this is the pivot table. Now it's my trick to get this routine into the other one. So simple, I'm going to say copy, put it here at the end, and do the same thing here, and go and put this at the end. All right. Little bit explanation about how a script looks like. A script runs from the main submain to the end sub. This sequence determines which action is being performed at what time. So action number 1 is the text import. The next one is the append the field. The third one is the control total. The next one is the gap detection. So this is, let's say, the table of contents of a book, and these are the chapters. Now, if I want, these chapters do not be in the same order. I could easily say here and put the pivot table somewhere here. That would work as well. There would be no problem. So that's your important. So if I would copy this pivot table and put it somewhere else, I would get an error because the pivot table does look at the specific unpaid invoices, and that one is only created here. So that means I have to put it behind it. So changing the sequence here will change the execution of the script. Changing the functions where they are has no influence at all. So this is the sales. I save it. So now I have this bit of script. I can close this one. Okay, no. So this is my script. Now I'm going to test my script. 1, 2, 3, 4 files, 1 result, and here we have 2 results. So let me close everything, throw it away, and I'm going to see if I can run my script. So I saved it, and I'm going to run it. Okay, so I got a question. Yes, calculate it. Cool. So what do I notice? I do have a result here. In my sales invoice, I do have a result right here. So those are 2 results, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 files. The only thing is I don't see them here. I have to refresh, and there I can see exactly the same result as I have. So that looks pretty good. Now, if I would run this script, I would every time would have to, if the files would exist, it would ask me a question if I would like to override them. That's one thing. Well, let me see if I can. We see if we can run this script again. Oh, yes, replace. Yes, replace. Yes, replace. Yes, replace for the totals. Yes, replace. Okay. So I can see now 3 observations. 1, first of all my files are open. ID can have an indefinite number of files open. It all depends on the memory of your system. But if you don't need a file, why keep it open? Close it. Secondly, you notice that it didn't refresh my file explorer. And then thirdly, I had this question about the control total. So let me just close everything and go back to my script. Now, throughout the years, I have created what I called a generic script template. And this script template does a number of things. It defines some global variables. It defines path of where you would like the project to be, where your data resides, where your import definition are stored. If you would like to use an error folder where you can keep on logging, and where your macros are. And I even added for you something what I call a run date. If you need to have an audit that repeats on a daily basis, and you would like to keep them separated, if I in ID would say this one was from, I don't know, 2020, 05, 04, and rename the other ones also, then I wouldn't get the issue with do you want to overwrite. So I've added a run date. So here is my template that I can use. So my project location, let me go back to ID. I'm using presentation. So if I go to my Windows Explorer, I say go to my documents, my ID documents, ID projects, presentation, then you can see this is my project location. So copy this. And you can say here in the script, oh, it's already there, but here is the location. You can paste it, and then for this generic template, you can say, okay, I'm always going to use this as the location. Especially when you want to share things across the network, you could have an external project and make that to be, the project location for every user. And you can also say, for example, your project location, if it's default ID, you can use a different variable. You could use client.working directory, for example. So let me just close another window, which was bugging me a little bit. So let's go back to this one, and let's start attempting to make some changes. So first thing, what I would like to do is replace this. So I'm going to use the same bit of code that I have here, and that is project location. So I'm going to for my submain, and I'm going to use a variable. Variables in ID can have various formats. You could have text, you could have integers, text string, integers being numbers. You could have constants. There are quite a few. The most commonly used is a string or text. So we need to define a variable. Dim project location as string. Basically what it does, it allocates memory, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. So dim project location as string. Then when I've done that, I've allocated memory, I need to fill that memory. So between the submain, I'm going to fill it with a value. This is what we call a global variable. Global variable you can use throughout the entire script. If I need to do something and have a variable only specifically in a routine, I would dim it here. But then I can only use it in this routine and nowhere else. So dim project location as string. So now I have to define it. So I have to say project location equals, and now there's a command, and this is one of the resources I often use, and that is the language browser. It gives you a lot of options on ID. Gives you even something on basic ID, so you could even do a file copy or something, copy paste. But I need to do something regarding the client, the ID. This you will get used to when using it, when viewing it. Things like client applies to ID. Things like database applies to a file. Things like if you would like to do something with gaps, then you have here the specific instructions on gaps. So how do, if you want to do a gap detection on date, or a gap detection on with the value ignore weekends, if you want to do a gap detection on numeric files, here you have everything on gaps. Something like paths are related to client. So here in client, I scroll down and there's a very old command. If you look at the name working directory, something very old window terminology, we still use it. And so this is the command here that I can use to determine, to tell ID, right? This is my, and I just can paste, and this is my, so I'm filling my project location with the location of where ID is set, and that means this project. Oh, sorry, language browser. I need to have this one. Let me close this one. So I'm now setting this. So once I've set it, there are various tools to see if you filled something correctly. In order to start a script, but you keep in control when it progresses, there are two buttons right here, and that's a breakpoint. So if I put a breakpoint here, it means it will stop here. It will run from the top down and it will stop here. It will allow me to say, I would like to stop, I would like to continue. So these are breakpoints. They're very important and to use in a script. Also for debugging purposes, you will use those quite a bit. So if I would stop the script right here, and let's see what happens. I can say run, and it stops. So now I could say here, if I hover, sorry. If I hover, you can say here is the full path. I could also type it in here, project location, and that would give me the value of where the project is stored. So that's quite nice. So I can stop the script, and I know that my project location is correctly filled. One thing you need to be very conscious about. Look at the last character of the project location. It's a backslash. If you look in Windows, you see there is no backslash. ID works with absolute paths. So if you want to make a change, make sure that the variable, if it doesn't give you a slash at the end, that you add a slash to it. Okay, so done that. So now what I can say is, can I use this variable in my script? And I can say, yes, I can. And I can say, this is the line that has the path inside. Now, never ever start editing a line. Always make a backup. So this is the line. I highlighted it. I can say here, copy, and just paste it below. At least I have one line, the original line, with the correct information. Putting an apostrophe in front will turn it green. Green lines are not executed. Sorry, I had to take a sip of water. And now this is the line I can start editing. So let's take the variable, double click, and you will select the variable. You can say copy and start putting it in here. Paste. So this whole path I can take out. And I will take it out after the first apostrophe, after first double quotes. So I'm going to take this out, project presentation up till here and including the backslash. That is the path replaced by the project location. I'm missing here something, and that's the @ sign. If you want to bring two variables together, and this is a variable, well, this is a constant. If you wanted to bring two together, you have to use this sign. That's VBA. So same thing, same trick. Project location end, and then I'm going to take out presentation, and here we have the location of the import definitions. So I've made this line considerably shorter. Okay, so that's one. Let's save this. And save this as number 2. Yep, replace it. So now we've done that. Now, due to the fact that I've increased I want to put this one a little bit more neatly aligned. So it looks a little bit nicer. So here I've done that. So that's one thing. By doing this, if I give this script to someone else, different username, he could have it in my ID documents in his projects in a different project. That different project location will be loaded if he or she runs it into this variable. So you could have it at a different location on the machine. As long as the sales invoice exists in the source files and the import definitions, the RDM exists in the import definitions files, there is no problem at all. We've made it generic. So next step. So this is sales number 2. So I'm going to save it. And if I run it, okay, so here I can go into the, by using these 2 buttons, step into and step over. Using F8, step in, I'm going into the function, executing it line by line. And here you can see it executes good because in the back line I just created the file. If I would do step over, it executes the line and stops at control total. You can see now it had appended the field. Now I can do it again and it will do. So I could now run it, but the only change I made was to the text import, so I can stop the script. And if you want to see proof, did we edit the quarter? Yes, we did. So there's the proof that that routine works. We also noticed that at the end, a lot of files are open. All these 4 files were open. So it's good common practice to close them. Now you can see here that the file is being opened. You wouldn't be surprised if you would say client.close database will close the file. Now, I've been using ID for quite some time, and I've been always been taught to neatly name the closures of the files like this, not using DB name. And the reason for it is if you have a join is at least 3 files: primary file, secondary file, and the new file. If you have an append, you could have up to, I don't know, 30, what is the limitation? Something like 32,000 files in one go, right? I prefer to individually name the files. So here again, we're opening the sales invoice. I'm just going to say here, I'm going to copy this, go here at the end, go to the beginning, and paste it. Now you may wonder, why do I do an indent here? I do an indent here so I can see that this code I've been added manually. So I know that by the indent, it's code that I manually entered. So this part in this sales invoice, we open the file. So on the next line, I'm closing the file. Here, sales invoices. On the end of the file, I'm closing the file. I'm creating a result, so there's no need to close a result. The result is stored within the file. Duplicate key detection. Here, open the file, but there's another one, creating here a new file. So I have to do it twice. To open the source file, and I have to also, and now I need to copy copy this part. Easy trick in ID. Click on the first word, use your shift key, and then all the way to the end, and it copies the entire name. And you do it like that. Unpaid invoices. Now, I'm going to just copy this and just change the name. Saying here, unpaid invoices. Here. And this is a pivot table, so it remains within the file. And I'm going to look up the one for the sales invoices again. I've done it before. No need to. Well, here we go. Here we open sales invoices. Oh, I need a second one as well. And that's the total quarters. And do that one right here as well. So, and then here we have sales invoices again. And we add the close to the last routine as well. And it's an extraction, so I also need the unpaid invoices. So let's do an enter and do that one as well. Do it like this. And take the unpaid invoices as well. Here we go. File, save. Okay. So if I'm correct, if I run this script, it should import the file, do all the stuff, and close everything. So what do we see? The script completed. Neatly, all the files are closed. So that's quite good. The only thing is I still have to push here that refresh list. So can we find something to sort that out? Yes, we can. We go to the language browser. And as you think, this also has to do with the client. And let's look for a refresh. And here you have the refresh file explorer. And that one refreshes the file explorer window. So very simple command. Client.refresh the file explorer. And just before the script ends, we put that here, and that one gives an update on the files. So let's try again. Throw everything away. Blank. Run. Okay, so I got a question. The control total must be calculated. Okay. And look, everything is neatly closed. And here we have that it is, the files are shown here. So the only thing now I need to take care of in this script is to get rid of that message that, remember that if you that we click on fields on the control total, that it asks the field statistics are not available. So where can we find that one? And also, so we have to do something here. Let's go to the language browser. Just to do with the database. It's a file where, and here we look at something called field sets. Gets the field set object. So here we see the syntax. Set stats is db.fieldstats for the field that I would like to have it. And then I have to do set db is nothing and set stats is nothing. Okay. Copy. So I have to go here. Before setting the control total, I have to do the set stats. On which field? Balance. Then it does the DB control. So this one calculates the field statistic. It should take away, it should eliminate the question, do you want to calculate? And then here it puts the balance in there. And then I have to do two things. Set DB is nothing. And set stats is nothing. And that meaning clearing the variables, the values, that's being done here automatically. Set DB is nothing, set field is nothing. So setting them to be emptied. So file save. Let's try again. Throw them away. So this is the language browser. I can close you. I can close you. So here we have. We've done that as well. Let's run it. And here we have everything. Did we get a question on the field statistics? No. If we open it, was the balance calculated? Yes. So that's the way to do that little trick. One thing, in case if I would run this script now again, it will say you want to overwrite. Yes. Do you want to overwrite? Yes, please. Do you want to overwrite? Yes, please. Want to overwrite? Yes, please. This can be quite tiring if you want to do that. So there are two commands that you can use. And especially in testing when writing scripts, those are very nice to use. So you don't have to get this prompt. Okay. And there's a command true, and which starts suppressing the messages do you want to overwrite. And at the end, you would have to say it, put it back on false. So ignore warning true, ignore warning false. This one will suppress the messages. So let's say file save as. Step number 3. And replace it. Now, and at the same time, so let me run this one. Now you can see I have files here. And now it doesn't ask you anymore about, do you would like to overwrite? It just overwrites. Very simple. So you could do that. One thing in addition, when I have my project, I could still have other files open in ID. If you would like to make sure that when you start using the script that everything is being closed, because the script may run for some time, you can say client.close all. This will closes all the files that are open. Only use this command at the beginning of a script. Don't use this command as a replacement for this one, for the client.close database. There are even other commands that you can look up in ID script help called db.close. Will also close an active file. But it's my experience that doing it this way gives you the best the best solution. There are various ways to accomplish things. This for me is the best. So if I have a file open, so for example, if I would have unpaid invoices open, right? And if I would say, let me put a stop here, run it, Now going over it, you see it closes the file. Run it, continue to run it, and it will override, create a new set. Sometimes by testing scripts also, ID sometimes abort, especially when that happens on a virtual machine. Just let me close this one. Thank God that your ID saves everything automatically. So it's not a big deal. So refresh. Let's try to run the macro here from the run, number 3. And as you can see here, in a minute it will change the hierarchy, and it does it how it does. So now, and somebody asked that question on the chat, and I don't have any problems of sharing that with you. It's something that I have built into my generic script. So let me open this script, and let me open my script template. If you would like, for example, to use a run date and add it to the name of the file, so you get sales invoice space this year, this month, this day, and then even a time, you can use this Visual Basic command that takes the date, that's the current computer date, takes the time, that's the current computer time, and you format it in a specific order. I found that YYYMMDD works best because sequentially, I mean, the 15th of March will in this order be higher than the 2nd of April. Well, if you turn it around in a different format, then it depends on a different alphabetical sequence. So run date, let me just copy this and go to my sales invoice number 3. So that is something that's being filled, right? But the variable run date does not exist yet. So I have here dimensioning the run date as a bit of text. So another way, if you would like to, I showed you that if you put a breakpoint here, it stops, and then you have that watch window here at the bottom. Here. Remember that I typed in project location, and that gave you a value. And then here on the next line, I could type in run date, and it gives you a value as well. So the value is 2020-05-05-14.28. Do remember that you cannot, for example, use the colon in a file name. So don't do that. Don't make it here. Make it like this, because ID doesn't like that very much. Basically, Windows doesn't like that very much. So now we have that run date. How do we add that date to the file name? Okay, so I have something with run date. Right, so here, this is going to be my new file name, DB name. So after, let me see if I can explain that to you, rename. So after that, I would like to see a space, 2020.05.05 space 14.25. So this is the format that I would like to see it, right? So I need to replace this bit. So space, then I'm going to add a variable. So I need to preserve the name of the file first, and run date and space.idm. So basically the .idm quote is going to replace by this whole bit. Now ID script also has a nice replace. So I'm going to say I'm going to look for .idm quotes, and I'm going to replace it with, now I have to think correctly, I need to have a space, quote, and run date, and quote dot IDM quote. So let's have a look, see if that one works. I'm going to say find next. No, this one I want to skip. Find next, replace. So it goes space, run date, and then the extension of the file. So replace, replace, replace. Ladies and gentlemen, I even sometimes was very enthusiastic with this function. I said, yep, replace all. And then if for whatever reason this text is being used somewhere else within the script, it messes up. So be careful when using it. Don't say replace all. Replace, 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 replace. And we just carefully run through it. And then we're done. So if I find now the next one, that's the first one that's I already did. So this one now should be fine. Save as file number 4. And that's also something I didn't explain that to you, but when I make changes, I keep my own kind of revision. It happened to me, and sometimes still happens to me, that I create a script, make a change, save it, run it, and then it doesn't work anymore. Well, doesn't work is a big word, but you get an error. So you rather have always a version how of that worked before you made the change. So this one is called number 4, and always save a script before you start running it. That's another bit of information. So we know that this one is correct. We know that the format is correct, or the run date is correct. I made a change. So I'm going to delete everything. And I'm going to say here, run it. And look, now you have neatly the date, the run added to it. And it's only available in ID script. You cannot do this in Visual Script. In Visual Script, you cannot work with variables. So that's not possible. This can only be done in ID script. So now if I would run it again, I even could take now out the ignore warnings, because I'm not going to overwrite anything. And I can prove that to you. Just taking this one out. When I run it, the variable of the date and the time gets refilled. And then here we have my next run. And you could, have this script run on an hourly base, daily base, monthly base, whatever, and it will give you the run date. So that is my steps, how I would, okay, one thing more. Supposedly that this one is entirely done, right? You save it, you can make it final. Then there is one final trick you can do. In the macros ribbon, you can say bind to the ribbon. And here you can say here, I'm going to create a new script, give it a nice token. Let's say a basketball. Browse to the file name. So we have here sales invoice analysis, and we have this script. Now I would like to add it to the ribbon, so I can make a new tab and rename that tab to be my ID scripts. and rename the group to be sales. Now I'd like to have it at the end, so I'm neatly going to transport it down. And in the sales one, I'm going to add my little script. And then the next thing is that here I have a new ribbon. Just press this one and it will start creating your runs. No questions asked. Here's the new set. So this is how you would normally start with scripting. Now, what I have done for this, so let me do the following. If I go to my home tab and to my project overview, you will see a lot of runs and a lot of deletions, etc. So I have to go all the way down. There's also a way that you could create a script from here. Use the macro button. And I say, I would like to do the last one. Append, gap, and do this one. These are the steps. Importing of the file, append the field, do a gap detection, duplicate key detection, summarization, record extraction. What's missing here? Pivot table. Go to a visual script. And here I have a visual script. File, save as. And here I have my visual script number 2. Just going to make it a different name. And now what I can do is say here, run it. Oh, and it has the question here, do we like to override? Yes. 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 And yes. So this one will always be time-stamped on 1435 because that's inside the script. So if I would like to edit this step, or let's say edit the append step of the field, and this is how you would, append it. You're appending it through the graphical user interface. You're not looking at the code. So if I would like to, make a change here from numeric to virtual numeric, I have to do it like this. And the gap detection always is you edit something through the graphical user interface. So you have the options using the project overview to either select ID script or visual script. So in the end, I've created this sales invoice final. I worked on the, I think yesterday, which I would like to give that to you. You would need to edit your project location, but this one does everything I've done here. And remember the PowerPoint presentation that I talk about import and I talk about data preparation. Try to use incorporate it into my routines. So append field and control total has something to do with data preparation. AN means analytics for gap detection, and analytics for duplicate key detection, and analytics for fuzzy, or an analytics for direct extraction, or an analytics for the pivot table. Those are my analytics one. I don't have reporting one. And what I've also done in this example is enabled logging. So if I would do that, doesn't matter what the project location is. I think your current working directory will always be your product location. So what I've done also on this script is that it enables logging. So if I look at my library file, no, I don't have anything in my library file on others. If I would run this script, it would create a file called log file. And you can use that routine to copy that into any of your scripts as you want. And this one will create a log file. If you look at the log file, it says what time the script started and what time the script finished. Can be very helpful when you have large scripts and that you the script error somewhere, and you could actually write this little bit of code anywhere in the script. It's opening the file, and if it doesn't exist, it creates it for you. Very simple. And then you just use the print at line statement, line number 1. So if you are not sure that you have an error always here, well, here, look, and I've incorporated more things, field checks and file checks into here. So you have a fully working example of today's session, and that's the way how I would program it. So to have a look at it, I'm checking, for example, here if the sales invoice text files exists. If you use this command, it refers to a little bit of VB code here at the end, looking at the file system object of Visual Basic for application. It returns a Boolean value, either true or false. So then when you say here, when it is false, when it doesn't exist, then write in the error log report, sales invoice is missing, and go out. If it's true, then you start importing the file. So if it's false, it exits. So if I don't have the file, then it exits. So if you would like to bulletproof this one, and that's a little bit nice of trying to do that. I haven't done that yet, but here in my source files, let me call this one sales to invoices. Now this script, if I would run it, should run without any errors. That's one thing. And number 2, if I would create the log file, it would create a number of errors. So let's have a error. It says, hey, sales invoice is missing. In my data preparation, I can't find the file. No, if the text file is missing, then my IDM file is missing. So then I can't do the balance check, the control field. And I can't do my 6 analytical steps. So this is perfect for, so here I have to know this is something where the script goes wrong. You don't get an error, but you do have logging. So then you have to look, oh, sales invoices. Let's have a look in my source. Oh, it's now called sales to invoices. Great. So then I can say here it should be sales to invoices. And then I would have to do the same change here and make the change here as well. Well, I could do that. Sales to, no, I won't, because then you can have this script. My source files, just rename it to as it was. And now if I would run it, it would run without an issue. And my last one is here, and you see normal start, normal end. Now, well, one final last thing. If you ever say, okay, very nice that the script run, but I would like the user to see that the script has completed, you can say something. I would like to add a message box, and that's also possible. You could, for example, could do that right here. And in Visual Basic, there are a lot of message boxes available. And I can say the simplest one is this ID script has completed. And when you run it, you will get a message box at the end saying, please note, the script has completed. And unless the user clicks on OK, he can't do anything in ID. Here you go. And that's the information towards the user. And there are many forms of message boxes. This is the simplest one. So this is a little bit the end of my presentation on how I actually do a scripting, use scripting, and tackle problem by problem, or issue by issue, or item by item, however you want to, however you would like to call it. But this is the way that I would like to script. Try to start simple.
Thank you, Desmond.
First time is always the most difficult time. But I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Desmond. It was a very useful presentation. Just for Desmond, I think someone is. Yeah, Desmond, thank you for that presentation. I think it was very useful, and all the users on board who are interested in making their transition to scripting will find it useful. I think we'll just take one question because we are beyond our time. The question is more specifically on the pivot table. When we get the pivot table result in the idea script, can we also export that result into either an idea file or an Excel file through the idea script? Is that possible?
Yes. You can say here, unpaid invoices. Here's the pivot table. You can say here, for example, when you have, you can send it to Excel. If you have one row, one column, and one data field, so let's take out that amount, you also have the ability to say send to an ID database. So here, when clicking on an Excel, it will give me here the, just call it pivot tables per quarter, XLS, goes automatically to your result folder, but that's a path that can be programmed. And it's also possible to say, here, I would like to have it sent to an ID database. Click on the export, and then it will create a pivot table balance per quarter. It takes the name of the pivot table, takes out the spaces, and creates the file. And as far as I know, if I go to my history, there is the creation of the pivot table. Oh, sorry, I have to look at this one. I have to look at the history, and here's the history to export to ID, but I think there is VB code available that you would be able to also program that in ID script.
Okay. So it's not you cannot copy it from the history. That's what you're mentioning.
No, only okay. If you want to put it into a script, then I would have to look. I think it's available in the language browser.
Okay, we'll check that out. Okay, yeah. Great, Desmond. So Desmond, what we're going to do is, if there are any other questions which come in, we are going to definitely get back to you on that. We would all like to thank you for your time this afternoon, and we really appreciated your inputs. And thank you everyone for signing on today, and good wishes to all of you all. Stay home, stay safe. And Desmond, good wishes to you too. Thank you very much for your inputs today.
You're welcome. Anytime. I will make this material available to you.
We look forward to that.
Yeah, and then you can distribute it if you want that.
Thank you so much, Desmond. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, you're welcome.
Have a nice evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, same to you. Okay.